So, hi, and welcome to the Story Behind Empowered Women series, Nicki. So, you're Dr. Nicki Steinberger, and I met you through our Empowering Women group, and I was fascinated with your story about how you overcame type 2 diabetes. And I'm really intrigued about knowing more about this because I'm actually very passionate about going through my own sort of health and wellness myself. So just if you can just let the viewers know about what you do, and then we can go and dive into your story. So what is it that you're actually, what's your term, what's your title?
Yeah. So, well, my title is I'm a holistic health educator and a writer. My doctorate degree is actually in clinical psychology, so I bring in the health psychology, mindset and perspective. It really weaves through everything I do. And, in one word, if it could be narrowed down, what it's really all about is practice. So and to expand that, it's holistic lifestyle practices, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but that is what we focus on.
So it's actually not just about food, it's about lifestyle as well, I guess, isn't it?
Exactly. It's not just about food at all. Food obviously is one major component, as is movement, moving our bodies, as is stress reduction and creative self-expression, and dealing with addictions, and recovery. So to make a practice truly holistic, people tend to confuse the term holistic with natural. And that's because the two intermingle, but really holistic is the whole, our entire essence. So it's body, mind, and spirit. And we've heard that. So practices really for us to create change and transformation need to tap into the body, the mind, and the spirit for long-term sustainable transformation, or else it really tends to not happen.
So I know that you're a teacher and a writer, so you teach this, and I know you're passionate about writing, and we'll get on to that. But do you see clients on a one-to-one? Do you work with them in groups? How does this work for you?
Yeah, so up until now, I've worked with clients individually, and I do work remotely most of the time, unless we happen to be in the same place at the same time. And we focus on, again, the holistic lifestyle practices. So the idea is, after an in-depth questionnaire, which I've created, which is fun and expansive and goes into detoxification and supplements and anxiety, I mean, really across the board, we'll have a Skype session, and then I create an 8-week lifestyle practices guide, specifically tailored for you. No two guides are the same. And then we'll meet again at the end and have, email communication throughout. And after my book, I will be doing a course, and then I'm thinking about doing a group coaching where I'm going to take about 10 people through the process of reversing pre or type 2 diabetes.
So what kind of clients do you see? Is it mainly people who've got diabetes, or are there other people with other health conditions?
Other health conditions as well. I tend to focus more on the blood sugar and metabolism, metabolic syndromes. But, really who I work with is predominantly women,
Mm-hmm.
and they are holistically minded, or they've never walked into a yoga studio or a health food store, in their lives, but they're ready to make permanent change. They're fired up and they're ready to take on simple lifestyle practices.
Mm. Now, you've got me addicted to turnips, and I'm eating them raw. I never realized you could actually eat them raw. Oh my, they're so delicious.
Aren't they nice?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I know that root vegetables are a really big part of helping our gut, isn't it?
Oh,
So,
yeah. And we hear the term probiotics a lot, and really, the enzymes from raw living foods, as much as we can get, really, it starts in the gut. And as far as blood sugar, it really helps to balance out blood sugar, in our digestive tract, our gut microbiome. I mean, everything, they call that the second brain.
Yeah.
So important, and those vitamins, those minerals.
So what it's kind of like the chicken and the egg situation. What came first? Were you fascinated with holistics first and foremost, and then you knew how to address your own diabetes, or was it the other way round? Because you've cured your diabetes. That's why I was fascinated with your story.
Yeah, and let me just mention cure. So I used to think that, there is a cure for type 2 diabetes. And now, after, I guess it's been 8 years or so, I've come to believe and experience that it's not so much a cure, because once you reverse it, and whether that's pre-diabetes or diabetes or even metabolic syndrome, which happens before, once you reverse it, it's a lifestyle plan now. It's a long-term game.
Mm.
And in fact, it's not cured. If you go back to the lifestyle that you were living beforehand,
Sure.
it will likely return.
Of course.
So I self-studied, holistic health, metaphysics, spirituality, nutrition for decades.
Mm.
And then I was diagnosed when I was 45. And that's when I set out to reverse it. I have sort of a, healthy apprehension toward chemical pharmaceuticals. So, when the practitioner said, "Here you go," I said, "No, thanks. I'm going to try on my own,"
Yeah.
And I was able to do that. So that was sort of my aha moment from there. Let me go ahead and share this with other people and help other folks.
And I guess that must be incredibly rewarding when you can do the same for other people. So I guess that's the mainstream of your work, isn't it? Helping people to reverse this condition.
Yeah, reverse and prevent,
Yes.
because diabetes is such a growing epidemic. I think we're supposed to see now 1 in 3 people by 2020. So there are, a lot of people with diabetes in their families or even friends around them, and they have certain symptoms and a sense that if they go in that direction, this is what is going to express itself at some point. So
Yeah.
I do get a fair amount of folks that are more in the prevention camp, or they have, kind of an early pre-diabetes, and they don't want to go down that road.
Yeah. And I guess that it's just the change of our foods over the generations. I guess our young, I know for a fact that my children have eaten very differently to how we ate when we were younger. And that's going to continue to get worse, I guess, as more and more foodstuffs are, compounded by all these chemicals and all these loaded with sugars and everything else that just messes up our whole system. So what is, have you always been fascinated with holistics, and did that where did that come from your, what was it that led you down that path in the first place?
I think, if I could say karma, I think I just came into this life as one of those people. If you're familiar with the book Be Here Now by Ram Dass, I think I had that when I was, a preteen or a teenager. And it's just the kind of world and insight and people that spoke to me early on. Spirituality was always a fascination. So I think that, there was no pivotal moment where I came into holistic living. Really, it was since I was younger, almost like a nonconformist and going against the grain, going against the mainstream. And there were certainly pivotal points that led me specifically more into what I'm doing now. But as far as the general field, it was really just who I was.
And growing up as a child with that kind of mindset, being very different, how did you find that with mainstream schooling and people around you? Were you challenged by that, or were you allowed to express that very naturally?
I was definitely challenged. I
Mm,
was allowed to express it naturally, but it didn't come
mm,
without gravel, it didn't come without opposition.
yeah.
And certainly the mainstream from my family, to out to community and school and whatnot. And really, this wasn't when I was, it was more when I hit teenagerhood, that it really started to show itself and my nonconformity.
Mm. And I guess at times you would have been challenged to perhaps move away from it. I get, but it's so ingrained in you that something keeps telling you to move forward regardless.
Yeah, and that really makes me think of when I was on the path to reversing type 2, and I've done it twice now because it did come back because I got off of my practices,
Yeah.
to the extent that I needed to be. But yeah, I had to stand up strong, and I had doubts. So I didn't know for sure that it was going to work.
Mm.
I certainly had those doubts and fearful thoughts come in. If you don't take the medication, XYZ is going to happen. If you don't do this, this is going to happen. Well, do what you're doing, but take the medication just to get you, over the hurdle, and then stop it. And yeah, I had fears come up and doubts, and it took a lot to stand steady in my path, and go with my beliefs, with few around me saying, yeah, you got this.
Yeah. And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? It's just, as long as you've got your people, some of those people that really understand who you are, that's enough of a support network, isn't it, to keep you standing firm in your belief, your faith.
Yeah, and really, even if you have one person,
Yeah.
because I really had two, I had two people, but even if you have one person, and even if you don't know anyone personally, you can certainly get support. I mean, there's people like me, I'm not
Yeah.
the only one, who are willing to support other people through their journey. And there's community groups and there's online groups.
Mm.
So if you want that kind of like-minded,
Yeah.
like-hearted community, it's there, like in your group.
Yeah, and I think that tends to sometimes frighten a lot of people when they realize that it's not just about food, they have to make a lifestyle change. And I think that's a real no for some people, because they realize that they've got to compromise so much, and they're frightened that loss and losing loved ones, or perhaps upsetting people around them. And that's a very difficult and challenging situation for anyone to be put in. But I guess when it comes to your life, your health and well-being, you can't really compromise that. And so what advice would you give to people if they, because obviously there will be people watching this, and will be, understanding they've got to make changes, and are pretty concerned about perhaps that feeling isolation, or that feeling they're diving off a cliff and they don't know whether their wings are going to come out, kind of thing. But what would you say to those people when they're with making that radical change?
I would say go big.
Yeah.
Go big, and at the same time, baby steps. It is incremental steps. Do not compare yourself to other people.
Yeah.
You need to start exactly where you are. When I work with folks, we start where you are, and we just take that next step, and whether that means you haven't taken a walk for 10 years, or, you're running 3 miles a day, whether that means you haven't eaten a salad for 5 years, or you're juicing veggies every day.
Mm.
Most people make significant change when they take small steps, because we can go into a lot of overwhelm if we look at the big thing. And that's in my book, which goes over 16 holistic practices. I say, you don't have to jump into all 16 at once. They're
Mm.
here, you can pick and choose. And really, when you go incrementally, it's amazing. At the end of a month, 6 months, wow, I'm doing 10 practices I wasn't doing. and it just integrates organically, naturally into your life. So, you know, mindset, I say, go big. All right. It's time to not care so much about what other people think. And we're human beings. We do care, but we also have this mind that we need to play around with, this mind that we need to help influence, right? So it just doesn't run all our old tapes. And this is a very significant practice, and this happens with meditation and other things. But, you know, go big. If you want that vitality, you know, you want to feel awesome, and you want to get your creativity out there. You know, I believe that we are all here to create and express and share our gifts. So it's time to go big, but take it easy, take it slow, and get support. It's not a solo endeavor. You need support.
Yeah, I was going to say that's crucial, isn't it? Because when you've got that support, you've got that soundboard, and also somebody who's also gone through this experience like yourself, knows that the pitfalls, knows what the steps are, you know, for each individual. So having that mentor, somebody just to hold your hand through that process is you know, an incredible aid, isn't it? So what is your book about? You've written this book. It's due. When is it to be released? Is this month?
Yes, soon. Today's the 4th, so it's going to be launched on January 22nd.
Wow.
Is the thought. And it's called Wave Goodbye to Type 2 Diabetes. 16 holistic lifestyle practices to prevent and reverse diabetes, reclaim joy, vitality, and plenty. Brilliant. So the book is a fun read. It's an easy read. I share part of my story in reversing, and I go through some myths about health and illness, and then I dive into 16 holistic practices. And so it's kind of a mix of how to, with my story and personal experiences woven through. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. And, you know, sky's the limit from there.
Brilliant. And I take it that we can get it worldwide. We can get it here in the UK and, you know, well, all over.
Yeah, it'll be on Amazon.
Brilliant.
So you'll be able to get it, and it'll be available digitally and in print. And then a few months later, I'll do an audio version.
Fantastic. Are you reading it yourself?
Yeah, I'll be reading it myself. I think for these types of books, it's nice to connect with the person who wrote the book.
I was going to say, yeah, and it's really interesting because I spoke to another lady, another writer, Janet Groom, about audio, because we you know, we're both all of us are writers, and listening to audio, it's very particular to the sound of that person's voice, the integrity behind that person's voice that shapes the story. But with something like this, with your work, having that, you know, deepens the message, doesn't it, when you read it yourself?
It really does. When you can, you know, connect with that person. And it's like when we listen to podcasts and we feel so much closer, you know, it's an intimate experience. So I'm excited about that. And I'm going to do a course following the book. So for folks who want to take it deeper on that level, you know, some people just like more of a self-study, others like a coaching. So that will be fun too.
And are you doing this course online? Is it going to be available online?
It's going to be online, yeah.
Brilliant. So everybody can get hold of it, so it's accessible. So when will that likely to be coming out? Have you got any plans for this year?
Yeah, it's going to be this year. I would say probably within 3 to 4 months of the book launch. I'd like to see the course done. Yeah.
Fantastic. But the book is the launch pad for people to see about making those lifestyle changes. I mean, you know, just making those changes alone is going to be the first step, crucial steps. But you personally, is the online course very similar to you working on a one-to-one? Would you still be able to tailor make, you know, what people need individually, or is it just a generalization with reversing diabetes?
Well, it's going to go deeper than the book, right? Because if you've read the book and you want a next step, and it's going to include video, so there'll be that component, and I'll be demonstrating, you know, different practices, meditation and juicing, you know, morning ritual and raw foods, all sorts of things. Coaching is, you know, it's more one-on-one. I mean, you can ask me whatever questions you want.
Yeah.
It's even more specifically tailored, you know,
Yeah.
just different modes for people who like
Yeah.
to learn in different ways.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So what are your plans? Are you going to be writing any more, or is this your, no, you know, is this your first book, Nicki?
It will be my first published book. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And
And
yeah,
have you got any inspiration for any future books?
I do. The next book is already outlined, and a little behind the scenes. The next book is called "I'm Not Recovered: Embracing Sugar Addiction and Living a Kick-Ass Life."
What a great title.
Okay, so at that point, we're going to go deeper into the sugar addiction, and that includes flour. And we're taking a look at, you know, this idea of recovery. We're so focused on that end goal, but
Yeah.
really, let's live life now. Am I fully recovered? No. Do I still have these addictions? Yes, but that doesn't mean that I can't live an amazing life. So that's where I want to go with that.
That's lovely, because I was talking to somebody about this the other day. It's not actually about you know, getting rid of all the things that are our shadow side, or you know, the demons within us. It's more about, well, how do we use this to transpose it into something that is, you know, is enjoyable. So that's very encouraging. I mean, I was addicted to sugar. I had a you know, a food addiction myself when I was younger, and I think a lot of my damage comes from around the gut because of that. So for me, I'm loving the fact that I'm making, you know, I'm doing, well, changing, you know, the things that I was having, like wine, and was got loaded with sugar and all the things that I was having, and I'm making sort of, you know, paradise bars full of coconut and raw honey, and I don't have, you know, I don't have a sweet tooth, but I have this satisfaction of having this sugar influx. But it's such a nice, I can't describe it, but it's a very different feel from those sugars that are loaded with stuff that's no good for us and sends us crazy.
Sure. How nice for you to be able to have your paradise balls and not feel, you know, so drawn to the other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and just, you know, to what you were saying, that, you know, yeah, not looking at that end goal so much and thinking that we have to be rid of it all, but rather, how do we live in the present moment, you know? And what you're saying really brings us to the present moment. This is where I'm at now, today, in this moment. How do I make the most of it? You know, it's not about where will I be tomorrow. It's about being right here, right now.
And that's quite a leveler, isn't it? Especially, I guess a lot of this affects things like our hormones and, you know, our whole endocrine system, I guess. And it's you know, it must lead to a lot of depression and things, that the anxiety and stress. So have you found that your emotions are more leveled out now that you're on this much cleaner diet?
My emotions are more leveled out as I adhere to the practices.
Yeah.
And if I fall off to a larger extent,
Yeah.
then sure, my mood is affected, you know, then, because it can start with exhaustion. And, you know, if meals are skipped, it can lead to anxiety, melancholy, of course. I mean, we're all, you know, so interconnected.
Yes. So it's becoming mindful of that, isn't it? And it's a barometer for us to say, hey, today you've forgotten something, or I haven't done my practice. So I guess that's, you know, it's becoming mindful of that and not beating ourselves up about it as well.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no place for that. And happily, I stopped doing that some years back. You know, it just takes one layer off. Okay, that wasn't the best choice, you know, that I made. I'm not a bad person because of it, and I'm not going down because of it, you know, because I know my practices, and I love my practices. We need to come to love our practices, most of them anyway.
Sure.
As part of our well-being, you know, as part of our self-care practice. as part of our daily schedule, you
Yeah.
know, and having that grounding place, I know that I can come back to presence, come back to feeling good, which is what we all want.
Yeah. And it's having that lasting inner peace, isn't it? Because you're doing the very best you can, and you're satisfied that when you do something that's not so good for you, that's okay as well, because at least you've acknowledged it. But you know, as you say, it's not about beating ourselves up, it's about acceptance.
Absolutely. And when we join together in community and
Mm,
step out of isolation, you know,
yeah.
which I always have to remind myself to do, being a writer and an introvert and, you know,
Yeah.
behind a computer a lot of the time. But however we join together, it's very helpful, because staying isolated can be detrimental to our mental and physical health and overall well-being.
Yeah, and that's incredible, and it's an incredible epidemic, isn't it? Isolation and
It
loneliness.
is.
I've just written a book myself that's coming out in June, which helps with that. It's not just people that, you know, we assume are isolated and lonely. You know, we can be
Mm,
isolated and lonely in relationships, in the
mm.
workplace. You know,
Right, right.
and we're not encouraged to kind of talk about it either. But I guess having these practices supports that, and it encourages you to find your people, doesn't it?
It really does. It
Yeah,
really does. And they're there, they're here, they're all over.
yeah,
Um, we just have to be willing to first have the mindset and understand that we need that, and then take a few action steps.
fantastic. So Nicki, if people want to get in touch with you and to find out how to get hold of your book, and to obviously, you know, get in touch with you about your courses, etc., you've got a website, haven't you?
I have a website, drnickisteinberger.com,
Lovely.
and right now there's a picture of the book cover on there, and in a couple weeks there'll be a link to purchase the book. Um,
Wonderful.
and then I've just started a new Facebook group that I'm excited about. It's called Joy, Vitality, and Plenty. And in the group, we're focusing on just those things rather than illness and detriment and ailments. We're going for the joy, the vitality, and the plenty. So if you want to come and have that conversation, you'll be one of the first to join. And you can get there by going to drnickisteinberger.com/community.
Brilliant. Oh, Nicki, it's been an absolute pleasure. And there is
Thank
so
you.
much I want to learn from you, because you've really set me on a path. Part of my regime at the moment has incorporated a lot of the things that you've been sharing in our group. So thank you so much for that. And I'll add the links to this video as well. So yeah,
You're
thank you
welcome. Thank
so
you
much.
so much. Thank
Bless
you.
you.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.